right, here we go. All right, Al, take it away.
Okay. Good morning. Welcome to the Future Work Leadership Conference, hosted by the Bellevue Chamber of Commerce. I'm Al Lewis. I'm the Vice President of Economic and Workforce Development at Bellevue College. Before we get started, I'd like to provide a couple things about Bellevue College, talk a little bit about how COVID has affected Bellevue College, and then talk about the holiday that's upon us today called Juneteenth. First, let me just say Bellevue College is a proud member of the Bellevue community. We serve over 30,000 students annually, and we offer 13 baccalaureate degrees. And we just recently launched the Tombolo Institute, which is focused on tech and professional education training to help people upskill in their current roles or to help people who are looking to change jobs transition into new roles with new skills. I also have the pleasure of sharing today that we have a new president. Governor Gary Locke has been named the interim president at Bellevue College. He started this past Monday, and he's going to be with us for at least a year as we prepare to find a permanent president that will begin approximately July of 2021. So just to kind of give you an update on what's happening at Bellevue with the COVID crisis, within 48 hours, in less than 48 hours, Bellevue College went from a ground-based institution to a totally online school. Who would have ever thunk it, given the circumstances? All of our employees are working remote. All of our instruction is done via the web as of right now. As we went through the process, we had tremendous support and from our faculty and staff in supporting our students. Now, making this transition did not come without hardships. We had to figure out different ways from a technology standpoint to support our faculty and also to support our students as well. We've been very fortunate in that we were able to maintain our enrollment, almost all of our enrollment through our spring quarter. And currently going into our summer quarter, we're up 17%. We currently plan to be online for the summer, and we're going to be online for the fall as we continue to explore ways to deal with this new epidemic. One of the things that has changed, though, in the last few weeks is because of some of the things being loosened up, we've been given permission by the state, along with the other colleges in the system, to bring back certain courses to campus, primarily in our workforce area. And for Bellevue College, that meant we were allowed to bring back some of our nursing programs to one building. And if you came to that building, you would feel like you were going into a hospital because we do a temperature check, we do a health check. All the rooms are put together in a socially distanced manner. So really it's becoming a model for how we're going to come back to school whenever the governor decides to open up different phases in King County. However, another downside of the pandemic is that it's going to have a tremendous negative impact on the college's budget in the next, not just this year, but the next coming years, because at the state level, because the state revenues have been slow to come in, it means reductions across the board. And the college has been mandated to look at it, think about a 15% cut in state allocation funds for the coming year. And what that represents for the college is about $7 million. So we've got our work cut out for us to really figure out how to cut that budget back and trim the fat. But we feel very confident we can do it. We've got great people. One of the things that Governor Locke is looking to do is to not only bring together the entire college around this effort, but he's also looking to bring in external stakeholders to take a look at what we do, what we need to cut, how we should prioritize, and things of that nature. Because once again, this is the community's college, and as we brought Governor Locke in, we reached out to a number of companies and individuals who were external to the college to weigh in on that search, and we want to say thank you for anyone in this room that participated in that. Also, as part of COVID, we've been asked through the Bellevue Chamber to be a testing site. So Bellevue College is currently a testing site in partnership with the Chamber as well as Kroger for COVID-19 testing. So any person can come through at any time and get tested for the COVID virus. Lastly, I just want to reflect on today is Juneteenth Day, and in the spirit of the current environment around African American lives, that the things that have happened in the last few days, Juneteenth is a day of celebration. It kind of historically celebrates the freedom of the slaves from the South, specifically in the state of Texas. The Emancipation Proclamation that freed slaves actually happened 2.5 years before that, but it took a long time for slavery actually to really end. But to that note, I pose a question to my audience today, and that question is, has slavery really ended? The answer to that question is no. There's an Amendment 13, which abolished slavery, but it abolished slavery with one exception, and that exception was if you were convicted of a crime. So slavery still exists in America today. And if you look at the court system and the justice system, a disproportionate amount of African Americans, men and women, are engaged in that process. So as we think about moving forward, this is an inflection point, I believe, in our history, where for the first time in history, when it comes to protests, you're seeing African Americans, Asian, European Americans, all walking side by side and protesting. And this all happened because of what happened to George Floyd in the 8 minutes and 46 seconds that officer had his knee on that gentleman's neck. My hope today is that we take a moment to reflect on the most current events and how we can, as a collective race of humanity, as Americans, can work together. So I do have 3 asks as I close today. The first ask is, and I just said it a minute ago, is can we please reflect on the recent current events involving African American men and African Americans in general. And I ask that in the spirit of the people I'm talking to can hear me, so I can't see anyone, as brothers and sisters, not allies, but as brothers and sisters. Because one of the things that I've learned in my life when I'm sitting down and breaking bread with people that are different than me is that we share similar values, contrary to what you see on TV, contrary to stories that you've heard. Most people that I am involved with in terms of race and ethnicity that are different than me, we share very, very similar values. And that's really what we got to get to in this country, to understand that there are a ton of shared values among all the races and ethnicities within the United States. The second ask I have of you is, how can Bellevue College partner with your organizations to create more internships, job opportunities for our students, as well as coming to you to provide cost-effective training for your current and new employees? And then my last ask today is, please make a donation to our foundation to support our students in need. Although we are in a very wealthy suburb of Seattle, we still have people that are struggling. We have students that have food insecurities. We have a food bank at the college that we can't keep filled. We actually have homeless students going to college at Bellevue College through a special program. So your dollars are needed and your support is needed. And so once again, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to share with you this morning. Welcome again to the Future of Work Leadership Conference hosted by Bellevue College Chamber of Commerce. And now I'd like to welcome the President and CEO of the Bellevue Chamber, Joe Fain, to talk more about today's webinar.
Of course, we're really excited to welcome Ambassador Locke to Bellevue as the new college president. And particularly, Al, we want to thank you for sharing your message about Juneteenth and everything that's going on in society today. This is, there's never a bad day for us to have the conversation about race and equality, but there certainly couldn't be a better day to kick off a program than with the celebration of Juneteenth. Here on Friday. So Al, thank you so very much. The Bellevue Chamber team has done an incredible job helping our members and other area businesses and nonprofits get access to a lot of the resources that they need to be able to start back up. King County has recently purchased 25 million masks and other protective supplies, and the Bellevue Chamber was one of the first organizations to begin immediate distribution. Our team opened distribution thousands of units of masks and sanitizer over the last 2 days. We'll be open for another round of pickup and still have plenty of supplies available for those who need it. So if you have not yet, make sure that you visit theBellevueChamber.org or click on the link on your screen to put in your request. A special thanks to Executive Dow Constantine and his whole team at King County for the hard work that they've done to put our region back to work safely. I also want to thank our sponsors for supporting this series, as well as to help each of us prepare for the future of work. We're very glad to welcome Amazon to Bellevue and are grateful for their support as this year's presenting sponsor. I also want to thank Accelerate for being today's webinar sponsor, and the Bellevue Chamber board member and membership chair Nancy Heen and her team of technology, project management, and business specialists are some of the best in the business. She is a program sponsor for today's program. I also want to thank our major sponsors: Microsoft, Puget Sound Energy, King County, the City of Bellevue, and AT&T, and our corporate sponsors, Falco Sult and the Port of Seattle, as well as our associate sponsors, ACES Northwest Network and the University of Washington. Finally, I would like to recognize our growing list of virtual conference table captains, and I believe we've got a list here somewhere that we'll get up on the screen here in a second. These folks have stepped forward to provide their guests a VIP experience. For information on bringing your team to this recognition and benefit level, please contact the Chamber. Now, before we welcome today's speaker, I want to remind you that this platform gives you the ability to interact with our presenters throughout the day's program. Simply use the Q&A and chat feature on your screen, and we'll get those answers in real time towards the end of the program. Now, I have the pleasure of also introducing today's keynote speaker, Laura Malcolm. Laura is the founder and CEO of Give in Kind, a modern social platform for coordinating support through life's disruptions. Laura spent 10 years in the project management, building B2B and B2C products for both startups like Brighter.com and Connectivity, and public companies, including Dex Media and Supermedia. After the tragic and unexpected loss of her first child, Laura combined her professional and personal experience into a rapidly growing company that allow friends and family to support one another from anywhere. Laura is a Northwest native, graduate from the University of Washington, and has 2 little boys at home that keep her grounded. As we were talking before this started, grounded is one word for it. I also have 2 little boys at home. I don't use that euphemism. I just go straight up collapsed on the floor. So please, at this time, I'd like to welcome today's keynote speaker and someone who has a great deal of knowledge and expertise to share with us about how to keep your mobile workforce and your remote teams functioning at top capacity. Please welcome Laura Malcolm.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Laura Malcolm, and thanks for the warm welcome, Joe. As you mentioned, I am the founder and CEO of Give in Kind. Over the last 4 years, we have grown Give in Kind from a company that was built by myself, my husband, and 2 developers in Thailand into a nearly 25-person team across 3 countries and 6 states. We have learned a lot in these last 4 years about building a remote-first company. And so today I would love to share with you some of the ways that we've worked to hone our communication, our process, and our culture at Give in Kind, and then how we were forced to reevaluate all of those steps in this post-COVID workplace. As Joe mentioned, my background is in product management. Before starting Give in Kind, I spent 10 years running product teams from the earliest stage startups, being a first hire, all the way to running teams at global public companies. And in each of these roles, I experienced working with offshore teams and freelancers and contractors, and I became very comfortable with co-located teams. But my comfort with what we now think of as the future of work started before my career in tech. So this is a photo of my dad from 2004. He was always ahead of his time. I'm pretty sure there was no Wi-Fi when this photo was taken. But he showed me throughout my life that work wasn't about hours spent in chairs. It was about being efficient and dedicated and hopefully living your best life as a part of that. So it felt appropriate heading into Father's Day weekend today to dedicate this talk about the future of work to him. But he's not the only one that inspired our journey at Givenkind, as Joe mentioned. When I was in 2013, I was weeks away from going out on maternity leave when we unfortunately lost our first child just before birth. Our friends and family rushed to support us from all around the country, as you can imagine, as we've all done for someone that we care about. And I was grief-stricken. But I was also a product manager, which means that I am a problem solver. I saw that the mechanisms that our friends and family were using, the online platforms they were trying to use to give that support, weren't working for them. And so I knew that there had to be a better way. And so I spent those earliest weeks after our loss designing what would later become Givenkind. But then I put it away. I took another startup role and had a healthy son a year later. But then the time came for us to build Givenkind. We initially thought that we would hire a local development firm while my husband would stay at his job and I would build out Givenkind with a team of US-based developers. We were living in Los Angeles at the time. And then we got our first cost estimate, and I needed to figure out really quickly our plan B, how we could bring Givenkind to market in a way that we could actually fund ourselves. So we started looking into researching offshore options, but I wanted to be in development. I had worked with co-located teams, but as a product manager, I like to be elbow to elbow with my developers, and this was our next baby. We wanted to bring this to life ourselves. So off to Thailand we went, where the development team that we could afford awaited. This is a photo of our first day of work from Chiang Mai. So we sold our house in Los Angeles. We packed up an 18-month-old, and having never traveled in Asia at all, we embedded with our development team for 3 months while we built the beta of Givenkind. It was there that I really saw for the first time what many had already been recognizing as the future of work. There was a thriving expat community from all over the world living and working in these remote destinations thanks to a low cost of living and a high quality of life. There was fast Wi-Fi and modern co-working spaces. And pre-COVID, there was really a great opportunity to live and work remotely. But I was on a certain path that I thought. So we headed back to the US, where I assumed that we would follow the path that I had seen several times over. We would launch, we would raise, we would scale, because that's how I thought it worked. We were building something really important. I thought surely we'd go viral, users would pour on. If you build it, they will come. And I'd take those early users and I'd show our revenue traction, and VCs would be all over us, and we would raise our first round quickly and get the big team and the sweet office and the great snacks that I had become comfortably accustomed to working at so many high growth startups. Except that's not actually how it goes for most, and that's not how it went for us. We spent 3 years really grinding it out through slow growth and as many troughs and peaks as you can imagine. There's no joke about the startup roller coaster. Throughout those 3 years, our team size expanded and contracted drastically, depending really on how much we could afford to pay that quarter and how much we were hustling on the side ourselves. We used freelancers and contractors and Upwork and Fiverr for as much as we could. There was not a single other full-time team member outside of myself until just last fall when we raised our first round of funding, and we've raised another one since then. We learned a lot in those 3 years about how to bootstrap and how to make the most out of every penny that we had. I learned how to only tap resources when we really needed them. And then we learned really quickly how to scale our remote team in a way that I think is working out pretty well for us. And so that's what I would love to share more with you about today, is how we got there, and through each phase of growth, how we have set up to have a healthy and robust remote team. So early on, we made the decision to be remote. Once we returned from Thailand, we were certainly not locked into building a remote first company, but we loved our lead developer there, and we could use him fractionally and at a fraction of the rate that a local developer would have cost us. But it's a 14-hour time difference. And so that meant that we were committing to doing all of our development asynchronously. And that meant that we had to get really good at the pieces that I'm going to talk about today. Once we were committed to putting the elements in place to work successfully with one offshore team member, it then opened up the ability for all of our resources to be remote because there was no on-site onboarding or in-person meetings to be left out of. And we had set up all of the tools to allow us to fully function without needing to be together. I think that once you commit to being a remote first company, it's actually easier and some would say healthier for everyone to be remote, which might create some unique challenges for companies that are returning from shutdowns as some employees return to the office and others don't. It's really important to think about balancing that when you have a mixed in-office and out-of-office workforce. And that's why I think that if you plan to have any remote workforce at all, that you design for remote first. I think we're going to be going through the same transition that we did developing websites mobile first. Like, we know there will be desktop users, but it's much more backwards compatible to design your culture with the expectation that everyone is going to be remote. Now, our company is nowhere close to scale. So I'm going to be talking here about the 3 phases that we have gone through to get us to even these 25 people having a healthy remote team. And then how we had to review those through coronavirus. So I don't know yet what the next phases look like for us of our growth. So for now, I'm going to focus on the 3 MVPs that we've seen for the journey that we've been on, which I look at as being communication, process, and culture. So in the earliest days, and this is when it was me and one developer halfway across the world, the MVP is communication. As I said, when you're globally distributed, you're dependent on asynchronous communication. So if you ever want to not just connect in written form, you have to agree on set times and cadence for communication. That meant for 3 years, I had stand-ups at 9 p.m. And one of the best days I've had on this journey is the day that I handed off those nightly stand-ups to our new head of product. But by having team members committed to these regular and multi-time a week check-ins, even if they're just really quick stand-ups, it allows you to have those clarifying moments that we all need from conversation. So it might seem like you're adding more meetings to the books, but you can get so much more out of them than waiting for people to gather in a conference room like you would be doing if you were in person. So even getting those regular 10, 20-minute check-ins on the calendar allows you to ask those natural questions that you would when you're face-to-face. The next piece that's essential at this stage, if you're building a technology company like we were, is clear and complete requirements, because nothing breaks timing like needing clarification. If you have somebody who needs clarification on one little piece, that can be a 7-hour delay or a week of work in the wrong direction. So absolutely taking those extra hours of proactive communication to make sure that we don't have any delays that are just clarification based. And then the last is, at this point, starting to get the tools, any one of the many free and low cost tools that you can use for communication, collaboration, project management. Our team uses a combination of Slack, Google Docs, Airtable, Jira, ClickUp, Notion, InVision. I mean, this is just an example. There are so many endless collaboration and project management tools out there that you can use. And it's fine to test different ones with your team to see what works and move around. There is a little bit of overhead if you want to convert tools, but your team should really have total buy-in with them and be comfortable using them. Should also be clear as you bring on new tools that there's a clear output from them. So why are you using this tool? And ideally, there's an owner, an advocate for that tool, somebody who knows how to get the most out of it and is responsible for keeping up with housekeeping for it. Because tools that are designed for productivity, they get out of date. The requirements get out of date, the tasks get out of date, and then it just turns into noise, and everybody gets really good at tuning them out. So all of these tools should have regular housekeeping processes so that they don't turn into black holes full of things that we meant to do, but we didn't, and now we don't need to anymore, and we don't know how to find the things that we need to do. So for me, in this first phase, communication, cadence, requirements, and tools. As you enter into the next phase, you're still growing, but you're adding some more people to your team. Hopefully you've gotten the hang of communication and you can start to develop some process. When there's just a few of you, clear communication is your process, and that's great. But as you add people, you need to introduce them to the how, where, and why you communicate as a team. And this is where documentation comes in. Documentation is more than artifact of work done. It actually helps people jump in and move much more quickly forward. So for example, having a place to house and share your company mission, vision, tone, voice, brand. They're all living documents that change, but they can and they should be available to employees and contractors as they onboard. As your team grows and transitions, it also becomes imperative to get documentation out of the founders' heads and those of the early team members, the subject matter experts. Time spent now on those things is exponentially more time saved later. So one early area that you might develop process around is onboarding new team members. Build an onboarding checklist, because when the tools that we've become adapted to using are second nature, we can forget that there are actually 40 different tools and tables and logins and places that a new teammate needs to go to access information. We even added something so simple as who makes the introduction in Slack to our onboarding checklist. Because we know when you have somebody that's starting new in the office, usually somebody takes them around on the first day and they introduce them to everyone and they take them out to lunch. But when you're the new person who just shows up in Slack, it's like a new awkward experience. So having a process around who introduces them, for us, it's their manager. And we know when somebody's getting into Slack, we add them to their channels and we make sure that everybody has been introduced. But we also really do value our in-person time, even if we don't get it nearly as often as we'd like. So if I can, I like to plan hiring weeks around quarterly on-site. So that way we can bring in multiple team members at once, come together for our quarterly meeting. Then everybody feels like they know each other a little bit better when we fly back to our homes. At this point, you should also be developing more ownership. So startups are all hands on deck, but they definitely need owners. And creating ownership across the organization helps alleviate some of the growing pains. And it also helps mitigate the risk that all ownership will fall to those that are in office. And that does not support that healthy remote first culture that you're trying to build. The other thing that got us through this phase was a strong reliance on contractors, and being able to use them well depended on us having good communication and good process. As I said, we use Upwork, friends, freelancers. The point is just that at this phase, you don't need to hire a marketing agency when you just need social media support. I think they're very talented people on Upwork, and we've now developed long relationships with some of the contacts that we have made through third parties. I do believe that part of the future of work is in skill-based fractional work. We still pull in specialists as needed, and I believe that it allows our team to be super nimble at a fraction of the cost that hiring FTEs would be at this point for us. But again, documentation, process, and ownership are what make this possible. As you continue to grow your remote team, I believe that the real MVP becomes culture. And I know it's a really big word, or it spans a lot of things. So for now, we're just taking that as the bit that we can do as we start to develop that healthy team camaraderie from around the world. So I think at this point, it's really important to make sure that everybody feels included and they feel heard. So we have, for example, multiple off-topic or literally called water cooler channel on Slack, and a 30-minute call that anyone can join every week where we talk about anything other than work. Somebody might bring an icebreaker, and lately it's been a place where we can just sit with each other in the weight of the world. And it's just important that we make that dedicated time to digress away from work and not feel like you're distracting someone. And it's really important to set that aside, again, for that, for that team feeling no matter where we are. One of the other things that we've been focusing on with such a distributed workforce is really how we create inclusive policies. Like, do our holiday and benefits make sense across our organization? So we're a company that can do business 365 days a year. We do not need to stick to 11 bank holidays, and we shouldn't if we can avoid it. So if we don't have an office that's closing down for Christmas, it shouldn't make a difference whether somebody wants to take Ramadan off. So we've been doing a full revamp of how we're looking at the holidays and benefits that we offer at Given Kind. Finally, as you grow your remote team, making sure that you have clear communication channels. So does everyone know who they can talk to? Because if they aren't walking by the door of HR, or you don't have HR, and people just know the flat organization in Slack, if they don't want to talk to their direct manager about something, do they know who they can turn to? Do they know what channels they should take? Should they message someone on Slack? Should they send an email? Should they schedule a video call? Just making sure that everybody knows who everyone else is, what they're there for, and how they can help. So as I said, we really spent 3, almost 4 years kind of working through these first 3 phases. And then COVID. So, we were already remote. That was great. We thought that we had everything that we needed in place, and we really wouldn't be impacted by the shutdowns. But the reality is now we have half of our workforce juggling kids at home and no childcare, half without. How do we make it work? And so we kind of went back to square one to start with. And that's the fundamentals. That's the pieces that we need to have in place before we could even start Given Kind. Does our team have their basic needs met? Is everybody safe and healthy and able to access things that they need? So we started there. Then we were able to start reevaluating the next phases. Communication. Now, what times and cadence makes sense for meetings? We should be flexible to off-time needs, understand that everybody's time is very precious right now, and need to be a little bit flexible and creative with our meeting times. We also rely on written communication more. So, if we have team members who need to be juggling their work schedule, with a partner at home, and they might be picking up their work in the evening. Again, going back to those early communication channels, making sure that things are written and well documented so that anyone can pick up work anytime. And then really looking at our process again. Do we need more tools? Do we need any different reporting structures for the time being? But I think the most important piece that we needed to reflect on was, what does our team need right now to grow and thrive? And one of the things that was really important to me was not treating team members with different challenges and schedules differently. So whether it's caring for kids or relatives or changing life situations, I go back to the lessons that my dad taught me, that this is about work done, not time spent in a chair. And any working parent, I think, can tell you that sometimes we are maximally efficient when we are very short on time. I'm going to wrap up with one of my favorite memes of this whole coronavirus period, and that is the recognition of how many meetings could have been emails after all. I think that in the last 3 months, we were really forced into creating new efficiencies for the distributed workforce. So for a lot of companies and employees, it was really new territory. It was, like the kids that were thrown from classrooms into Zoom. There's a learning curve, and there's a lot of skills that you develop over time to create that strong remote team. I believe that we have no idea what the next 6 months, 1 year, 2 years will look like. Changes to school schedules, less childcare availability, and vulnerable populations that need more support. And we have to fundamentally change the way that we work. So from my perspective, it's all about efficiency. How do we work with the time that we have? How do we avoid travel, in-person meetings? How do we be more respectful of time, knowing that people are juggling other unavoidable responsibilities? I hope and believe that the real future of work is one full of vibrant teams that are working from around the world, solving problems that they're passionate about, and they're empowered to do their best work because they have clear communication, expectations, ownership, and a culture that they love. And that's what I am striving to do, and that we learn a little bit more about how to do better every day. Thank you.
this remote work environment are, watching your presentation, taking notes all along, like, what's this tool? What's this thing? What do I need to be thinking about? Because it's really different when you're doing this for a couple of days because the office is closed, or even for a month because the office is closed. What is different is when you actually are making a fundamental shift towards this kind of remote work environment. And so there's a lot of questions that are coming in, and I wanted to get started with just a couple and just go to the brass tacks. I'm kind of a tech guy. I've got my staff on more tools, online cloud-based tools than they would care to recount. Could you walk us through really briefly the ones that you use and why you use them and why you like them?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we're on Slack like everyone else for communication and chat. And I think that has allowed us to foster some of those community aspects also, because we get to have the music channel and the water cooler. I'm an Atlassian user, so Jira, although we have moved away from Confluence for documentation, but if you want to keep it all in one easy to use suite, I like the Atlassian suite of products, and they've made web-based much easier. It can be a little hefty on the technical side, so I know a lot of people like Trello for product management. We use Notion now for a lot of documentation that has gotten really popular. We really like that for collaborative, everything from meeting notes to playbooks for the tech team. Our design team uses an InVision suite. Gosh, like I said, that's why you have an onboarding checklist, because I know there's a lot, and then they all become second nature, and it's hard to throw them out there. Those are my top ones. And ClickUp, we're using ClickUp for task management now.
What was the last one that you mentioned?
ClickUp. We use one called ClickUp for to-do lists and task management, sort of cross teams.
Yeah. I thought that I knew them all, but there's a few in that list that I'm going to have to do my research on as well. And of course, I got a number of messages on Telegram from my team, saying, "Oh, great, more online tools that we're going to have to start using." So, one thing from the technical to the human, what happened? Like, we're so used in this sort of 9 to 5, which nobody works in 9 to 5. It's always like 7:30 to 7 or something like that. But when you're in a distributed workforce and when you've got teams all over the world, what does that do to your sense of work-life balance? You talked about no longer having to do the stand-up meetings at 9 o'clock, which makes a lot of sense. But, there is a psychological upside to having a finite end to your workday and being able to have a block of time that's no longer consumed by work. Does this model aid that? Does it help that psychologically? Or is there a struggle between trying to find a way to actually separate yourself from work when you physically can't leave it?
Yeah, that's a really tough one. And I definitely think that is something that people were thrown into with the quarantine in a way that they had not experienced before. I chalked a lot of that up to, being in startups. So I was always used to working late or working long nights. And then, as you know, Joe, I think, with kids, then it became, I work until 4:45, and then I work again at 8 o'clock until 10 o'clock. And for a long time, that was just because it was the startup. Now I think you're seeing a lot more people doing it, and because they don't have a choice, right? We're juggling having families at home, and so I don't think that will be healthy and sustainable long term. With remote teams, I think that ones that are spread across the world, so you're talking about big time differences, it works better, I think, to have those flexible, intermittent, we essentially have someone who's working on Given Kind almost 24 hours a day. We have like a 3-hour gap. Otherwise, there's about 21 hours of somebody that's online making sure that things are okay. But I think that we're going to have to really watch out for how we make clear expectations of employees going forward. So I have, for example, started queuing up my Slack messages on the weekend. So if it's not important, I don't hit send, even though we've talked to the team about, you don't have to look at your Slack, we will text you if it's important. So I think putting in some of those clear expectations about how you will communicate and when a response is urgent is really important for balancing that. But even on the leadership side, just not making a habit of reaching out to the whole team on evenings and weekends will, I think, help everybody make that delineation between work and home time.
As soon as you started talking about queuing up Slack and not messaging on the weekends and things like that, I immediately opened my Telegram window, knowing that at any second I was going to get a barrage from my team. And sure enough, right on cue was a great, the scratchy-faced, smiley-faced, skeptical-looking person icon from one of my team members.
I hope you're taking notes, Joe. I hope this is very helpful for you and your team.
I'm learning so much, and I wish that I didn't have any of my team members on this call. So for going from the highly technical and the skills and the tools that are used to work to make this kind of thing work out, have you been able to bring any individuals onto your team that, either at the beginning of their employment, didn't have this kind of innate digital literacy, or there was a gap in their ability to kind of quickly adapt to some of these new tools? Because that's something that, as we work towards a distributed workforce and we use more of these tools, a lot of people do get left behind, just because of the innate nature that some people have for using technologies that others do not.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we have a team that has, either varying tech strengths or is new to the workforce. We just welcomed, this week was the first full-time week for a recent graduate of University of Puget Sound who was an intern for us and then took a full-time role, which was very exciting. And then we definitely have team members who are new to a lot of these tools. I think that's where the having ownership over tools and an SME that people can turn to is really important. If you just throw someone into a tool and they don't know who to go to for help using that tool or how to make the most of it, it's really frustrating to feel like that you're not getting everything out of a tool. So that's why we really do like to have somebody who owns the tool. They've spent more time exploring it. They can walk people through. And so I just think that as you ask people to use those tools, making sure they know who the owner of it is so that they can get those tips. And that has helped people onboard to new tools more efficiently.
We got a couple of questions coming in from the audience, and I want to encourage folks to either use the chat feature or the Q&A feature to give Laura your questions. One that just came in from Ari, actually, one of the great committee members on the Leadership Conference Planning Committee that was responsible for bringing so many of our great speakers in, including yourself, is asking about accountability. So, it's one thing to have accountability when you're in the cubicle next to somebody or in the office right outside the workspace. It's very different to figure out how to measure accountability when you're 7 time zones away and thousands of miles. Is there a way that you is that a end of the day meeting? Is it using these tools to just look at a report in terms of how many check boxes were hit or how much time on the tool was spent? What are the different ways that you're finding it effective to measure output and accountability?
Yeah, so we have a stand-up channel in Slack, which I have loved since that has been instituted, because it allows me to sort of see throughout the day as each developer is signing off. If they're signing off in Thailand, it comes in when I'm getting up in the morning. If they're signing off in Poland, they sign off. We're at the office for a few hours, and so they put their daily updates in that stand-up Slack channel. So it's a great way, referencing the tickets they're working on, what they worked on that day, and they're also having stand-ups twice a week that are just the technology team, and twice a week with our product owner also. So they are touching base with the US product team that's making sure that we're on track for features. But for me, I think we've done a fantastic job utilizing Slack in that way. We have a channel for deployments, so I know when anything's going out, one for release notes, so I can see what has gone out, and then again, those stand-up panels so that we can see what people are working on a daily basis. That really helps me feel like every day we have a window into what's being worked on.
One of the questions that just came in kind of goes back to our earlier topic about the tools that get used, and specifically in marketing and communications work. Are there any tools or technologies that you found to be really effective in that area?
Ooh, so we're just getting ready to do more expanding on the marketing side. So again, we have been doing, a lot of early stage manual work. So scheduling posts ourselves in Facebook. We did just sign up for SEM Rush. So, that's one of the more expensive tools that we use. We try to avoid, I think marketing tools, it's kind of hard because that's one of there aren't, I don't think, or I did not find as many of the really effective free or low cost ones. So for us, when you start looking at tools that are $200 or $300 a month, that's a big expense for a startup. So we do use SEMrush for tracking brand, doing SEO work. But we do almost everything manually on the marketing side. We run our AdWords manually. We do a lot of Google search. We do Facebook ads manually. We schedule our posts manually. So unfortunately, on the marketing tools, I don't have as much great ones to recommend. Canva for styling photos. I'm lucky that we have in-house design, but that's a good one for creating those social posts.
We have definitely maximized our subscription to Canva. Back again on the human side, and so many of the friends that people make and then choose to associate with in their private lives and their rec time come through that work connection. How have you found this shift? So making that very difficult to do with a distributed workforce. How has that shift changed your circle of friends? How you spend your free time? How your team, winds down at the end of the day, and how much time, effort, and energy is put into living their lives as opposed to their work life?
Ooh, this is just a tough one coming from a growing startup. I am not the best one to speak on work-life balance, but we are trying. We're trying to make it a point that we're transitioning now, that our leadership team weekly evening call to accommodate for getting our entire leadership team, which is balanced between 2 U.S. time zones and Thailand, with 6 people. We used to do our personal updates and then cover our agenda items. We're going to flip it around. We're going to do our agenda items, and then we'll have a little Zoom happy hour while we do our personal updates. So trying to get that personal piece into it. We do have one-on-ones. Everybody with their direct reports and their manager has a one-on-one. It's really important for me that the beginning of that one-on-one is how we're doing on a personal level, right? Having a chance to talk about things that are going on in our life. And really, in the last 3 months, you have to have that check-in to say, like, how are you doing? Because it is hard, and it's mentally distracting. I think that we've also done things like have everyone on the team, across the organization, order takeout for themselves one night. So we'll be like, hey, thanks everybody for a really awesome quarter of work, and so everybody's going to order takeout at your own home, and then we start up a channel just for posting the photos of the takeout that you ordered on the company. So we're not doing team dinners. We can't be together all the time, but those are some of the ways that we try and bring some of that fun and personality back into the company. I do miss, I miss 300 people and my friends at work, but as you said, I have 2 little kids. What are friends?
Yeah, exactly. This is not exactly the time of life as a startup entrepreneur with 2 small children to be asking a question about work-life balance. That was very unfair of me. One of the questions that I got actually from one of my staff, which makes a lot of sense, is we are all suffering from Zoom burnout. Here we are starting the day on a Friday. As people are winding down, it's going to be 81 degrees out. Yet we've pushed you all onto yet another teleconference. And this is it's an amazing technology. It's an incredible platform. 20 years ago, we could have never dreamed the frequency that we would use this, but it's a very flat 2-dimensional way of interfacing and connecting with one another. And really it lacks a lot of that connection. What do you do to avoid Zoom burnout or video conference burnout?
Yeah, I think I am trying to adopt, not super successfully yet, but I'm working on it. Some of the advice that I've heard from others, which is getting a really good set of Bluetooth headphones and taking a walk. I think this is really helpful during the summer. We are going to get this 81-degree day. Do your one-on-ones. If you can avoid doing screen sharing if you don't need to review numbers, if it's some strategic work, if there's a group call of some kind that you can take with some Bluetooth headphones, call from your phone, take a walk. I think that it also, by trying to be, sort of singularly focused on the conversation, I don't know about you, but I might be Zoom meeting here and responding to an email really quick here and then monitoring a customer support inquiry here. And like, that's even harder on our brains than just being stuck in Zoom talking all day. And so I think that we actually need to, wherever we can, set the entire computer aside and go back to just having some conversations outside while we can.
I have found that many of the one-on-ones or small group meetings that I've had over the last couple of weeks and maybe a month, they were all video in the beginning, and then people have found it very liberating to just call in or to keep their camera turned off. And I can completely respect, understand, and certainly emulate that.
Yeah,
You've talked a lot about things. Oh, go ahead.
I want to raise one thing on that, if that's okay. And
yes,
that
please.
is that I think that if you're having a group conversation, that there needs to be sort of an understanding on the organizational level if you're doing cameras on or cameras off. Yeah. Because there is very little more distracting than having 3 members of the team with cameras on and 2 off. And it's like, are you listening to, are we, like, so I think that it's fine to be like, this is going to be a call in, or we're all going to be on video. But unless, sometimes you're on it and somebody jumps off video for a second because they're muting and doing this. But, I think that there should be an understanding from the organization if you're by default video on or if you're going to call in for a meeting.
Yeah, there's been a lot of those conversations for internal meetings, and then of course it gets very difficult. Well, you'll have multiple teams from multiple organizations, and everybody from one organization's on video, and everyone from the other organization is on, a tin can with a string. So it's you're right. Setting those expectations up front makes a lot of sense. The question I was going to ask was around, frankly, around failures. This is a novel concept that you've been at the forefront of. The rest of the planet has come to it in the last 3 months. You've been doing it for a long time. What were some of the big things early on in working with remote teams that just failed miserably, or that you needed to make significant changes to the way that you were working that led you to where you are now, kind of with the understanding of what works and what doesn't?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you that when I give a similar version to this talk focused on product management, and it's actually titled 3 Things That I Wish I Spent More Time Doing. I think that these processes have been a constant improvement, and it is only by failing at them that I have learned where we really need to focus and implement and hone our skills. So communication in the beginning was not slick, and it was because of delays or work in the wrong direction that we learned, okay, we have to get on a committed cadence, because otherwise it's really easy to say, well, we don't need to talk tonight, and then, oops, I missed you tomorrow, and I had plans. If you're just trying to catch someone on Slack, who's around the world, there's a lot of chance for missed opportunities to connect. And then you have that delay in communication that is stopping everybody's work, because if somebody is waiting for an answer on one thing, so it really has been failing at each one of those processes. Bad requirements led to bad development, led to, a lot of lost time and lost money. And so I would say that the failure has been constant, but that is how we have been able to hone and improve those processes.
In the great presentation, to all of the folks now that, we had our status quo up until, COVID came in March. And then we had the disruption where everybody's trying to figure out how to work remotely. Now we're in a even more difficult space, I think, which is recognizing we're never going back to where we came from. And the quote unquote new normal involves this hybrid of people that are going to be more empowered to work the way that is most efficient to them. And then finding ways for that individual efficiency to then kind of meld into the organizational efficiency about, well, when do you need to come to the office and when do you not? When do you need to, be on camera and when do you not? When, how are we measuring the effectiveness and efficacy of different employees? One who is doing the exact same job but is going to be in the office because that's their choice, or one that's can be remote 100% of the time because that's their choice. So I guess the question is, moving forward for folks that are now trying to adapt to this new normal, what's the best piece of advice? What's the best lesson that you can learn? What's the best process that you can tell these folks to go through to make this transition successful?
This is a tough one because, Joe, I actually think that the big issue here is not the transition back to work. It's going to be the lack of childcare. It's going to be the lack of clarity around what schools are doing and the lack of ability, the lack of access to childcare. I think that is going to be a major issue around the country for our workforces everywhere. I think that you see those that work. If you are working documentation, communication, and process into your day, you have naturally created artifacts of work. So if you're using Notion and you're putting in your weekly updates for one team, you're doing your stand-ups in Slack, like I just don't care if I see that coming in from someone. And I think we have to not care if that work is getting done at 1 a.m. or 5 a.m. or 4 p.m. And we're going to have to just really adopt a 24-hour work cycle and understand that, again, it is that efficiency and that productivity that we see, and that absolutely does not need to be between 9 to 5. I know that some teams have had good luck setting just a certain, you can work any flexible hours, but these are the hours that we're all online. So again, it's that cadence. So if it's between 1 p.m. and 3 p.m. every day, everybody's online so that you know that you can ping someone and get that response right back. So that just falls into that agreed upon cadence. Otherwise, I think we're just going to have to accept that flexibility of time. And like I said, from sort of all the way back to the beginning of my talk, I think that I was seeing that around the world, where a lot of people understood that you absolutely can live full, fulfilling careers working remotely. And I think it's actually great that it has pushed employers into recognizing that it is not about having yourself in a chair for 9 hours a day, and that's actually not that healthy. So I hope that we can transition into being a healthy, thriving remote workforce.
Laura Malcolm, you have provided us a lot of food for thought, a lot of great information, and a constant reminder that I'm a terrible manager. So thank you for all of that. Laura, thanks so much for joining us, and we will be typing up your tool suggestions and sending them out to folks that are registered for this program, because I know folks have been interested in seeing specifically what those look like. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
Our next installment of our great program begins 1 week from today, 8 a.m. on Friday, June 26th, where we will explore the future of education with the founder and CEO of Coding Dojo, Richard Wang. You can, of course, register right now with the pop-up that should be popping up on your screen, and, of course, anytime at bellevuechamber.org. Don't forget to invite your friends and your colleagues to these free programs. It is a great opportunity to see the future from the comfort of your home. I want to again thank Laura Malcolm, our presenting sponsors, Amazon, our major sponsor, AT&T, Microsoft, Puget Sound Energy, King County, and the city of Bellevue for helping make this series possible. We also have one thing to do before we take a break for the day, and that is Amazon being very generous in providing a Echo Dot to raffle off each week. So we're going to go ahead and spin the wheel of destiny here and see who we have to... There it is. Michelle S. is the winner that has popped up on my screen. Staff will get in touch with you and make sure that you get your dot sent out to you very soon. Congratulations, Michelle. If you'd like a shot at winning a dot next week, get registered for our Week 4 program right away with Coding Dojo. Thanks again for joining us, and thanks again for being with us to celebrate the start to a great Juneteenth. I really appreciated Al's incredible comments here at the top of the program. This is a day that has been memorable for me over the last 8 or so years that I've been aware of it, and a good friend that brought me in and taught me about it. The thing that stands out most to me about this day is that the great freedom that so many in Texas were able to experience on Juneteenth came over 2 years after the stroke of Lincoln's pen, which is a great reminder that words are important and they're a start, but action is what matters. As always, stay healthy, stay safe, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining.